I didn't know that it was a thing, right? To do a refi cash out, get money, and then go ahead and reinvest it. I remember Matthias talking me through that. I said, I don't know if I just heard you right. You're going to leave me with ownership in a property where I can still collect on profits, where I can still have a skin in the game when this thing sells. All of that while I'm using this money on a new one that's already clicking away over here. I don't know how you beat that.
Welcome into the Get Invested podcast, a podcast about all things real estate and real estate investing, brought to you by Capital Velocity Investments and a part of the Matthias Talks Investing Substack.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Get Invested podcast with your hosts, Jordan and Matthias. We're excited today to tell you that we actually have a guest. His name is Tim Wakeland, and he's a longtime investor with Capital Velocity Investments, and only incidentally is he also related to Matthias.
It's true.
Through having married Matthias' sister, Rachel. Now, we're going to talk to him about how he overcame the trepidation of dealing with family and business matters. But for now, just welcome in, Tim. Glad to have you here. It's been a long time coming. I feel like we've been talking to you about doing this for, the whole year. Glad we could finally make it work.
Yeah, glad to be here. It's been kind of hard to get the schedules lined up, but finally getting it going. So glad to be here.
All right. Well, Tim, I think we're going to start with the beginning. Tell us a little about yourself. Tell the audience your story.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently a stay-at-home dad, so that's the end story. I've got 3 kiddos, and stay at home with them. We homeschool them. That's going wonderfully, but it is a busy schedule.
Task.
Yeah, it's a task. I went to college at University of Texas in Arlington, and I got a business finance degree. Kind of thought I might do something like that, and ended up working in insurance, being an adjuster for about 10 years after that, and was still doing it. Did that in a few different capacities, sometimes traveling around the country, chasing hurricanes and whatnot, and then hailstorms, things like that, and was in office doing some work like that. Basically, my wife Rachel and I decided as we started having kids, she works night shifts and we're passing each other, in the night, saying hi and not seeing each other. And after Natalie was about 6 months old, my first one, we just decided something's not working really well here. And it's kind of a fun process figuring out how to get to where we are today. Like, she kept trying to tell me, I don't like not seeing you. And I said, well, I don't like not seeing you. And she said, well, I don't want to stay at home. I like my job. I like working. I was like, I hate my job. I would love to stay at home. We had that same conversation, as simple as that sounds, for months before we were like, are you sure you're not lying to me because you think that's what I want to hear? And finally, we just decided to trust each other. And so that's what I do. And I have no desire to look back. Who knows what the future holds, but right now it's everything I've ever wanted to do, and it's working for us.
Cool. Well, on that note of children and family and enjoying time with them, that kind of brings us to like the big question is like, so what are your reasons for investing? So why did you get started, other than me begging you way back in the day to see you join us? What are your main reasons for investing? Kind of what are your goals, I guess?
I'm always trying to whittle down and learn more towards where I should be, and how do I get there? But just broadly, as my parents get older, your parents get older, like, you start to see the decisions and the things that you're having to wade through at the end as you get older. And that's kind of the number one first thing for me was, as it is for most, you got to have a plan. Like, it's not just going to keep going. Eventually, you're going to have to slow down your work. Your work is going to change or whatever. Your income's going to slow. And you're still going to be here, hopefully, and you've got to keep things rolling a little bit. So, that's number one. And then beyond that, once you kind of start to get that under control, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to work forever. I sure do enjoy vacation. I enjoy at least not having to work as much, just the typical roles of how do you get there? Because, I'll say early in life, but it still feels like we're in this mindset more than I want to be, is like, let's just survive the month, and we're not really there as much as we used to be, or as much as a lot of people are, but it is still a thing where it's like, we're making it now, and then we're trying to do everything we can for the future. But just the more that we can get the now on autopilot and just build up is essentially just so you don't have to work forever, so that you're taken care of when, because some people, they retire and health is okay and things go pretty well and it's not a big deal. And then you got disasters that happen. And, to a certain degree, you can't help that. You can't always plan for the worst case scenario, but you can try and just try to set yourself up for success. So always learning about that more and more every day. But that's kind of what got me thinking about it, I guess. Other than the fact that as you're growing up and in college, especially going to business finance school, they're just hammering all the time. Like, put money away. You got to save. You don't think you have to now, 20-year-old, but you do.
Yeah.
Start now.
Yep.
So,
well, I was actually going to ask, what kinds of things have you done before investing with Matthias?
Most of it. Things. I mean, I have an individual account that I still have that I've just invested in some funds that I actually got set up back when I was in college. One of the things that I did is I worked as an assistant, like at a financial planner's office. So I worked with him for a couple of years, and I got to see, I considered doing that for a while. I don't think it was really part of my skill set, so I didn't choose that road. But I did get to see kind of how that works and what he does, and got some investments going there just with an individual account, some balanced funds, some like just things to get things going. And I've invested in stocks here or there. I think I had a Scott Trade account at one point, did some stock investing and stuff like that. Everyone's got, I have 401k when I was working. So we invested that. We did target funds, just like real basic stuff that a lot of people do. And, Rachel still works, has got her 401k. And we basically, the bare minimum that we put in there is what they'll match. Like if they're going to match it, we're going to put it in. And then if we can allocate more, we will. But those are the kind of things that we have before, my investing with Matthias anyway.
Yeah, something we talk about a lot here is back to, the reasons for investing is financial freedom is kind of what we preach, more so that you get to work on your own terms, not because you have to, not because your kids need to eat. And this is the only way you can provide for them. I think I posted a bunch before in the past saying like, hey, I hope people don't retire. I hope you don't ever retire. And then it's a little bit of a firestorm, a little bit of an attention grabber, like clickbait. Yeah. I get it. But my point being is that I believe that we as humans, we always need to be working on something. Otherwise we're not happy. That doesn't mean we're working for money. We could be just hanging out with kids. We could be teaching, you could be coaching children. We could be, homes for, Habitat for Humanity. We could be, whatever it is that you're doing, you have a little bit of purpose, a little bit of things to do, a way to get a feeling of accomplishment. It doesn't have to be in any way related to money, but the way we get to that point is if we are financially secure enough that we don't have to work for money anymore, so you're working on your own terms. People love to travel. Like my in-laws are the cruisers extraordinaire, man. They're on a cruise ship more often than they're at their house, it seems like, and more power to them. They've spent their whole lives building up to this. Now they're officially retired, and they get their sense of accomplishment from traveling the Far East and Australia and places they've never been, and just always wanted to go, things like that. So
that's pretty cool.
I think it's important to point that out, but I completely understand, and that is what we are trying to, I don't want to say sell to people, but that's what we're trying to convince people to start working towards.
Right. My new slogan is no interesting person has ever retired early. That got some good response on Substack.
Oh, is that okay? That was your post. Nice.
No interesting. Yeah. And my point was like, if you don't have to work, there's so many things you could do, including stay at home. If you want to be full-time parent or grandparent, like that's not retiring. No one would say that's being retired, which is kind of why it's bogus that people accuse Matthias of being retired. Because he could be like, well, I'm just a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah. Retired from one thing and shifted into another.
Exactly.
I know. He gets that a lot.
Just the idea of keeping your mind busy and keeping yourself going. I've been through points in life where I wasn't super busy and stuff, and it starts to eat at you, and you begin to understand the whole, some people
we
retire
need purpose.
and then they've been working for a long time, they've been clocking along, and then they retire, and then they're gone.
Apart.
Oh yeah, the stats say, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what everything is. I don't know about everything behind that, but it does seem to make sense. And, I think, like I said, we've been probably most of us in places where you get a little bit stagnant. Maybe you don't know what's coming next. Maybe you're trying to figure stuff out, but before too long, you just feel like you got to move and do something.
Yeah,
100%.
So Tim, I have to ask, how did you overcome this typical trepidation of doing business with family. I mean, it wasn't Matthias' stupid face that convinced you. What was it?
Definitely not that. Definitely not that. Those big.
It was
big
his
turtle-
stupid mind.
You know, to be perfectly honest, I think it's a mindset thing, and I don't necessarily think it's for everybody. I think part of it depends on a relationship, and you may have expectations, but you have to be fair. And I guess I would equate it relationally to this idea that, if you go and you're going to go play blackjack at the casino, don't put anything on the table that you can't see go away. Like,
Yeah.
It's kind of I guess the relational aspect of that is you have to be willing to, first of all, say, no matter what happens with this investment, right? And we started lower and we're just putting more and more in all the time. But we started with like, okay, well, can I invest this and can I see this disappear? And can I, A, be okay financially, but B, and more importantly, are we still going to be good with my brother-in-law and Rachel's brother? And if you can't approach it that way and be like, that relationship means more to me than whatever could happen with this money that I'm putting out there, then I wouldn't do it.
No.
My personality is just relationships have always been more important to me than money. Money is the thing that I need to live, and I want enough of it to live the way that I want to live. But beyond that, I would never put myself in a place where I would hold him responsible for something that just went wrong. And I know Matthias is a person. I know he's not ever going to do anything that would make me feel like I needed to hold him accountable for something shady. That's not who he is. So it's just kind of a, can we put this in here and let it roll and see what happens? And like I said, I think some people may struggle more with that. I think it depends on your personality. But if you can go in with that mindset of whatever happens with the money, whatever happens with the investment, this relationship's going to be solid, and start at a place where you can say that. That's step one. And then who knows where it goes from there.
Which one did you invest in first?
Go ahead.
Our first one was what, 4th Avenue, I think was the very first one.
The very first one that we ever did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He's been in every single one of them up until Savannah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not to jump the gun on that, but 4th Avenue went great, and they all have, so it's been kind of easy to keep it rolling. But if you're going to go into business with family, if you're going to invest with family, if you're going to do anything like that where you're bringing finances and livelihoods into the family relationship, you just have to have the family first, or you're inviting trouble.
Like I said, I don't think I've heard it put that way, but that's a wise way of putting it. Is it like, hey, make sure you're not risking something that has the power to ruin the relationship, and then make sure that both parties are on that same page. Like, hey, we're establishing now that this is our priority, keeping the relationship, no matter what. It's kind of like, good paperwork makes for good partners, which family, you definitely need paperwork for working with family too. But if we set those boundaries very clear from the beginning, that's kind of the point of the paperwork is, hey, these are the priorities that we all agree on. We can move forward from there and see what we can accomplish.
Yeah, because that's where you have to be honest with yourself. If I was investing an amount of money, I don't know what that amount would be. Personally, I have sent everything to Matthias that I can scrape together. But if I was investing an amount of money and then all of a sudden I was like, man, I hope this doesn't go south, because then I'd be like, I need to not invest that amount of money. I need to reel it back a little bit. It's just an important way to, I think, see things and handle things so that you don't invite other trouble, because everything has gone great. I fully expect that it will go great. I can't wait to get more money sent his way, but things happen. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. Also, I don't know if I've ever heard a Cowboys fan with such reasonable expectations and just general about life.
Oh man, there it is.
Listen, we started on the Cowboys, buddy. I learned a long time ago, I do not defend the Cowboys. I just know you're right. You're absolutely right.
I grew up a Redskins fan, and my dad is a longtime Cowboys fan, so I had to get that in there. But I'm now a Panthers fan, so we don't really have a dog in the fight. But
yeah. No,
but
it is tough here being a Cowboy.
Switching gears a little bit, we preach a lot about all the different ways people can use funds to invest in this type of investment. I want to talk a little bit about the vehicles you've used to invest, because like you said, you used 401k to get started, something that, as I recall, it was dormant, right? It was one that you had with a company that you were no longer with.
Correct.
Yeah. Just talk us through a little bit about what you used and how that process has been.
Yeah. I mean, I've used a couple different companies, but basically it was dormant. I quit working for an insurance company, and it kind of sat there because we didn't know what to do with it. It was still invested and just kind of doing whatever they were managing it to do, but it was really hands off. I didn't really like that aspect of it, but I didn't know what to do with it. So maybe if it was more recent, I'd have better thoughts. But I remember we started talking, you and I started talking, and I was like, well, man, I mean, everything that we kind of have is tied up. Like, yes, I'm very interested. I grew up interested in stuff like investing in properties, potentially owning rental properties, things like that, right? Which we can come back to later maybe. But it's hard for a lot of us to find that initial way to get in because you can't start with $250. And so I started to just dig around and try to think, I'm like, well, I have a 401k that's sitting there. I didn't even know that a self-directed IRA was a thing. I honestly don't remember how I stumbled upon it. I don't know if you told me. Maybe you told me to begin with.
I think I told you about it because it blew my mind. And that's way back when I was learning about, because there's restrictions. I can't use my own self-directed IRA to invest in my own, because I have a ton of IRA funds that would have come in handy over the years to, to fund these types of investments, but the IRS doesn't let me invest in my own. So I was learning about what it was, and then learning about all these different ways and restrictions and how they operate. So yeah, like I think we both kind of learned that one together, to be honest.
I kind of stumbled through it a little bit, and the one that I'm in now can be more involved, but with what I'm doing with it, it's really hands off. I got the 401k retirement account rolled over into the self-directed IRA retirement account. So you just have to do a little bit of paperwork and submit it to the right parties. And of course, it's very specific on how it needs to be done, but they'll walk you through it. And you get all that submitted, and they'll roll it over into the account. And it sits there, and it's not doing anything, right? And it's just sitting in money until, like, Matthias gets an investment rolling, and then we do the paperwork to get it put in that. There's a few pieces of paper that you have to fill out, and they have very specific ways.
It can be tedious. Yeah, it could be like
tedious. That's what I'm trying to say. Is it's tedious, but it's not too difficult. And I'm sure Matthias got real tired of my phone calls. Like, is this right? Are you sure this is right? I'm not really sure if the thought goes here or here or But we got all figured out, and now it just kind of sits and rocks along. And it allowed me to pull retirement funds that were just sitting in something that wasn't being watched or moved, and move them over to something more useful that I can manage easier. It's pretty basic. We do paperwork every time I need to get into a new investment. When Matthias cuts checks, those checks go straight into the account. It's just sitting there ready to reinvest. So it's worked out really well. It's an exciting way for us to actually get a cash influx. And then I guess another add-on to this conversation is that got us started, but it was still a slow growth on a balance that was okay. Well, Rachel, like 3 years ago, she moved from one company to another. And this is an opportunity too, because there are certain qualifying events is what they're called, right? Is that the right terminology? Where when you can take that money then and move it instead of it just staying in your 401k with your company, it's not touched. So now she's got her new 401k with the new company. But instead of rolling her old 401k with her old company into that, we rolled it into a self-directed IRA for her. So now we have a whole new influx of funds to use. Just taking opportunities like that to get that initial balance going. But that was an exciting plus. As soon as she decided to move, I was like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So we got that moved over too. And yeah.
I think one of the cool things, and I'm going to shamelessly brag a little bit, but some of the things I talk about when I talk to financial planners or when I get feedback from financial planners or people involved in the financial space, a lot of them will poo-poo self-directed IRAs. They say that's outside of the realm of our control. My company doesn't offer those, the Schwab, the Vanguard, all these places. They don't offer that type of investment. So their knee-jerk reaction is say, well, you don't want to do that when customers, potential investors with me ask their financial advisors about it. They go, a lot of fraud there. And I'm like, well, they're gonna say that because they can't make money off of you if you pull your funds from them and put it in a different thing. But I've said in conversations like that, hey, man, I will put my returns that I've provided to my self-directed IRA investors up against your market returns all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I'll happily have this conversation. I want everybody to mark their place right now, and then in 5 years we'll talk. And I know how that conversation is going to go in 5 years. And I think you're kind of the case in point of how that went. You had your 401k that was growing, but it was growing slowly, and there wasn't really much you were doing with it.
Mhm.
But then a few quick things, and you still didn't have to do much with it. But I'd argue that had you let it sit there and compared to what that IRA is worth now, I don't think there's any comparison to what it would be, even with some of the crazy market returns we've had over the last few years, because there's also these crazy drops mixed in.
Yeah.
So I think in my shameless brag here, but I think that's something that I always try to push back on. Is like, hey guys, you can't argue with the returns. And now I can't guarantee those returns, but we have a track record of doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, even modest returns would probably match over span of time a lot of the index fund returns or market returns, with the potential of it being better. And as I assume just happened with Fourth Avenue, or no, that was Deer Run.
He was in Deer Run too.
You were in Deer Run, okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then all of that goes back on top, and the next time you invest, you have that many more shares, which means your income that's getting piled on goes up. And that's not a linear growth like an index fund is, right? That's a jump, which is just a different move.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed that. I mean, like talking about kind of the nature of it locking in, and there's always the possibility you go to a new investment, if things didn't go well, then you lose that money. But I always like the idea that it feels more locked in once you get an investment, and it's not just something that's doing this. I really like the idea of it feels more like made money. Once you reinvest it, it's again not made money, right? But the idea that you can grow it like that and essentially kind of lock in your gains. And one of the major selling points for me, I was going to try it anyway, whatever it was, I was going to send you some money. But as I started talking about it, the whole preferred return idea, where essentially if there's a quarter that's a little down, you catch it up, right? Which doesn't guarantee anything, but it does give you that opportunity. Like, it's not, well, we had a bad quarter, so you missed out. It's like, well, maybe the quarter was a little slow for this reason or that, or we had to do this or that with the property for better returns down the road. But I'm going to catch it up because you have this much locked in preferred return. I was like, man, that feels like a no-brainer. And I guess you know more about how common that is than I do, but I didn't think it was something that I'd seen much of. Ownership splits on top of that. It just feels like such a better model for an investor to actually build something, to me.
Yeah, you don't see it unless like you see dividends in stocks. But again, there's companies who have a huge track record of consistent dividends and growing consistent dividends. There's not that many companies that have that blue chip record, but basically that's never going to be the first position on profits. You know, that's fully up to their management whether they're going to pay anything at all. And then there's not like any, hey, we had to cut the dividend a few quarters ago, but we're going to pay it back. Don't worry when we come back. That's a cool thing. I'd say most syndications like what we do offer that as a way to align incentives with the manager to say, hey, we don't get paid until at least this preferred return is paid out to the investors. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I couldn't handle me making money on investment when my investors were, not making money at least that much money, if not more. That's not how I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if that was the case. That's not what I'm interested in. I'd much rather us all do well together. But I do want to just briefly touch on, like, so you invested in Fourth Avenue with the 401k. We were fortunate enough to do well in Fourth Avenue. We triggered a refinance on time. We were able to return 3/4 of the capital. So that capital plus the cash flow that had been distributed to you went back to your account. And then basically he was back to what he had started with and sitting in cash in his account, plus all the equity that he still had in that property. So he got his money back and then put that into another investment. And so he's literally doubled his money and more than that now, way more than that now, because both properties that you invested the IRA in have grown significantly in value. And that's what I'm trying to explain to people is that, hey, you got to get this going. But once you get started, the snowball can build pretty quick. And now he's in 3 different investments, and some of it's in cash, some of it's in IRAs. But from what we started with that first IRA amount to now, we're talking 3-4 multiples now.
Yeah. And it's just growing more all the time, which is exciting, obviously, as an investor. But I don't know that I can put it any better, but just seeing it come back and hit the account and grow, and then you have a bigger baseline to put into the next one. And at first, the investments were coming slower. You're building your business and everything, right? And so we had a little bit of a waiting period.
Had that pesky day job for a long time, too.
Oh, man, forget that.
So Fourth Avenue was what, 2017, 2018?
Yeah.
Okay.
2018.
Yeah. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't have all of that money. Like I don't know when we refied, but we used cash to go into Deer Run is what we did.
Which was a year later because we hadn't done a refi yet on 4th Avenue. But then for Heritage Cove, you used the
That's
refi
right.
cash plus all the cash flow to go into Heritage Cove. Yeah.
Right. So we scraped everything we could together and got that going. And then, yeah, the Heritage Cove, well, we used all the 4th Avenue that I had to go into it, which we still have some in 4th Avenue right now. Still clicking along, that still has potential to add to the mix while Heritage Cove is rocking along. And that's when Rachel moved her 401k in, we put that in Heritage Cove. So now we've got that going, and that's just growing and growing and growing, and can't wait to get that money to use it for the next thing. It's just a great snowball effect, right? That actually you see build.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you this, Matthias, and this kind of dovetails into all of it, which is when you're discussing this type of investment versus the traditional instruments that people are familiar with and therefore comfortable with, how do you find it to explain to them, for instance, this idea of if you sold an index fund to move to another index fund, you don't keep equity in that index fund. But in this instance, because of the refi, you still have equity in the original investment, even though you can now use that cash for a new one. We've talked about this a number of times on the podcast about refinancing, and I think it's something that a lot of people struggle to get their head around, that possibility. So how do you find that conversation?
To be honest, it's such a different concept. The syndication investment, the real estate ownership investment conversation is so different. We often don't get to how it compounds. You know, the only way you can compound in the market is basically if you have a dividend stock or dividend fund where it reinvests, you get more shares of whatever you're owning, which that's great. And I have a lot of stocks myself that do that, but still you don't get lingering, no cash in ownership, which is the end goal of a syndication, is to have a small percentage of cash in there, but your ownership never changes over the life of a syndication. So you could have no cash in a deal and have basically infinite cash on cash returns because there's no cash in a deal and it's still paying you cash flow, and then use all that cash to invest in another deal. And potentially, let's say you want to use 100,000. Let's say you put 100,000 in a deal, you got it all back. Put it into the next deal, got it all back, got it on. Like you could have that your original 100,000 back in your bank account and or an infinite number. Really, it's depending on how long you can keep finding these deals of zero money in the game, cash flow, equity ownership. That's how you build wealth right there, is when you keep that money moving to work more and more for you, but the ownership is just building and building.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some people feel like it's too good to be true. They're like, wait a second, I get my money back, but I also still own it. And it's the same thing as when you can like take money out against your house, right? Like there is that same instrument move, but yeah, that's the beauty of it, right? It's that you still get the income flow, even if you were able to pull 75 the first time and you had to leave 25 in. The income streams are multiplying and you still have the same amount of money. So even if you're someone who is like, look, I just don't think I got all the kids and all these things, I don't think I'm going to be able to set aside enough to build to a minimum, but you have an IRA that's a minimum, that in of itself, if you just did that repeatedly, you could be in such a better position in 20 years than otherwise, even if you didn't put one single more cent toward it.
Right. I remember that idea.
I'm not saying do that. Definitely put more money towards it.
I think once you get going, I think you don't have to prod anybody to. They're going to want to. That's what it was for me. How can I mean, it irritates me whenever Matthias is like, I got this opportunity. I'm like, I can't find more money right now, man. I mean, hold on. I got to, and it's like, I don't want to miss out on the opportunities because it's just great. I didn't know that it was a thing, right? To do a refi cash out, get money, and then go ahead and reinvest it. And I remember Matthias talking me through that as one of the things that would happen with the investment. I was like, I don't know if I just heard you right, because it does sound like it's going to be true. You're going to leave me with ownership in a property where I can still collect on profits, where I can still have a skin in the game with it when this thing sells, all of that while I'm using this money on a new one that's already clicking away over here. I don't know how you beat that. And I don't know if people get that. From somebody who wasn't in this kind of business or in this kind of, financial type investment, that really made it a no-brainer. And it makes you feel more like you have ownership, right? That's what it is like when I was a
hard asset.
Yeah. I knew it. My brother and I knew some guys who way back in the day, they owned tons of rental properties, which I think is like just homes, right? Rental homes. And Matthias, I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of where you guys started out, what you were doing a long time ago, right? And the whole idea of that was awesome, because the dream, as soon as you hear that that's a real thing and the guy's doing that, is, so you mean this guy has these properties, he gets money every month for not doing nothing, but he's got a management company to take care of that. Like, he's getting more and more hands off, and his money's growing and growing and growing. And then it starts to snowball. And like 3 years ago, he had 35 properties. Now he has 40. And he used all these to buy that one. Like, it's the same thing on a smaller scale in a slightly different model. And that was like, I was in my early 20s and I thought, I need to do that. Like, that sounds like something that would really, it's appealing. I was never really able to get my hands into it for any number of reasons, but this, like, the great thing for me was, and I've had to talk myself through it on more than one occasion, that's what this is on a greater scale, actually in a better way. And from my perspective, I'm not doing anything. Part of me is like, I know that if I wanted to wrangle this and try to learn it, maybe I could dabble in some stuff, and maybe I could even create bigger returns for myself as a sole investor, but I'm also creating bigger risk for myself. And I'm just living the life that I want to live while Matthias does this for me. And so why would I take this gift that has been given to me and try to mess it up? And honestly, maybe that sounds funny, but that's honestly the conversation I have with myself maybe twice a year. Is like, I'm really in the best spot that I could be in, because I'm getting to do everything I want, but I'm not even doing the work. And I just think the whole package of that is brilliant. So,
yeah. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And in this instance, the horse face is Matthias. Yeah. So it's all tracks. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, we do need to wrap it up here. I don't want to keep you too long, Tim. We were going to ask you what you've learned, but I think you jumped us and already told us some stuff and talked about it getting easier. If we were going to ask if it does, and it sounds like it does get easier to double down. But is there anything else that you have learned that you were thinking about in this
Feel free to give us some feedback.
And
we have this great commercial for us now, but tell us what we can do better, what you'd like to see us do in the future.
Man, that is a great question. I don't want to just sit here and say, you're excellent, don't change. There's always ways you can get better, but it's a question that I haven't really put a lot of thought into because nothing has really come to mind. I think that the updates and stuff like that, like on occasion, I've just been kind of, hey, what's going on here? Want to know some more information, good, bad, or ugly? I can call Matthias. I could just call him directly. So I do that. And I don't know how common that is, right? Probably less.
It's not super common, but it happens. And that's always a good indicator that, hey, I should increase the frequency of updates. Try to keep to the quarterly updates and things like that. But in certain scenarios when people know stuff is going on, or for instance, a hurricane just blew over, I have people will reach out and go, hey, just making sure that everything's good. And I'm like, I knew it was good, but I didn't tell you guys it was good. And we're working on the technology to get better at it. In my experience of doing this is always like, hey, the only thing that won't hurt and that people could always appreciate is more communication.
Yeah. In marriage and in business, you can just never have enough of it. And when you think you don't need it, you do need it. It's always there. And so, however that makes sense, because I know sometimes there's really nothing to report. So,
but that in of itself is the communication to me, just saying there's nothing to report.
We're rocking along.
Who's going to hate an email that just says, hey, your investment is kicking butt, everything is awesome?
Yeah.
Oh, you could just send out a meme of that Lego. Everything is awesome. You should just start sending that out.
But yeah, that. And I mean, early on, I would have said, find more opportunities. But also something I've always told Matthias, something that I appreciate is sometimes the best thing that you do is not take an opportunity that is not a good opportunity. So I've always appreciated the conservative approach. And that's just proven out time and time again of like, it doesn't project for the best case scenario. And that keeps you hedged against anything that comes along, because they do. Like, as a homeowner or anything, that things come along you weren't planning for. And so, not to change that conversation, but all that to say, I would have said, early on, well, I just need to not have money like sitting. Like, I need to do something else with it. But that problem is solving as it grows. Then I also think something like I have carefully, but I have told some of my friends that I feel like we have the relationship where I can say, you need to just look at this. And I've been sharing the information. Like, you need to just look at this and think about sending some money. And I think their biggest hang up is like, it's a, decent like initial investment in most of these things. So it's hard to get over that hump. And that's just a personal thing. Like, that's fine. They don't feel like they're ready to, whatever the minimum may have been, 20 or 30 or whatever it is. Maybe you don't even have it. Or maybe if you do have it, that's all you have. And so that's hard to just be like, well, let me just put it in here. But I also think, not to jump the gun, that you're trying to solve that issue too, where you're going to provide a platform for people to just invest in lower amounts to begin with. Cut this if you don't want to talk about it. I think that's something on which those are like the things that I would have said, these are improvements in the process, but they're really just part of growth. They're not lacking. They just take time. Right.
Yeah, and to address specifically that is one of the biggest things that people are like, whoa, if there's a minimum of 50, if there's a minimum of 30, they're like, you kidding me? Like, who has $30,000 laying around to invest that they could potentially lose? And I get it, and that's something I'm always working to solve. Is I do my best to keep the minimum as low as I possibly can. It's kind of the opposite approach that a lot of people that do this do. Is they'll be like, hey, we can get to 2 million faster if we set our minimum at 100,000. We don't have to get 20 investors. We'll be good. I'd rather have more people participate. And because of that, we allow less than our minimum very frequently. We're always letting people in for under the minimum because that's what they have and they're very interested. And I also know the value of, just like you, of getting them started. Once there's a proof of concept and they see, oh, I see how 5 to 7 years of doing this can really change my financial outlook. Even if you start with a smaller amount, and then once we proof that concept to people, then they're like, okay, that next 30,000 that they have laying around, it's a lot easier for them to understand what it is. And when you're buying big apartment complexes, it could take millions of dollars. That's just what it takes.
Yeah. Well, if you let somebody in lower, go ahead, Jim. When you let somebody in lower, then you create an investor that has those minimums. Like, you're just increasing your investor pool by letting them in lower, but building them up.
Absolutely. My dad's a perfect example of that. He was like, he had the money and he was like, I don't know, I'm going to put in, this amount for the Heritage Cove. And now when we get the next one, he's full on. But I think we have a problem when we kind of have to set a minimum, and then people see the minimum or hear the minimum. And then we say, it may not have to be that much, but it's hard for them to hear that after they hear the number.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Which I get.
Yeah. I get Matthias bragged on himself. I'm just going to brag on our mission. It is tougher to do it that way, but that is the mission, right? If you just go to people who have money already to make more money, it's going to be easier than what we're trying to do, which is to get people started who otherwise wouldn't do this. So it makes it fun, if frustrating.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that provides more value for you guys. And honestly, it's an opportunity for people that don't otherwise have the opportunity. I mean, coming from my perspective, like I said, Matthias wanted to do this a different way. I might have never even been able to get started. But here I am, and I'm actually building something that looks like it's really going to help us achieve our goals later or sooner, So it's a gift, honestly, as somebody who can invest money in it. It's an opportunity. And it's hard to tell people, hey, I got this thing that you need to look at because, it's money, it's finances, right? But it's also almost like, just do it. Just look at this because I don't want to not tell you. My parents have gotten into it a little bit with what they had, and it's been great for them. And I've got friends that still ask me that haven't invested yet. But ever since I told them, how's it going? I'm like, well, I got these checks and I'm putting it in that. And that's what you could be doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the,
but that is the thing that they've constantly said is, man, I really want to, but I have this or that. And so communication, again, if you've got the ability to do it a different way or to let them in the door, maybe that's somehow communicate around that. I know there's reasons and processes for everything, right? And that's your guys' decision. But I think somehow communicating like, hey, one of our goals is helping get you started. And so if we can do that and you can meet us in the middle somewhere, just talk to us.
Yeah, 100%. And I have that conversation quite a bit. People are like, man, I just can't get to that minimum. And I'm like, what can you get to? Because just exactly like you said, my goal is to get you into something like this. And we try to have that conversation with everybody who's on the fence about it. And if I'm talking to an investor about a specific deal, it's because I know that deal is going to be a good deal. So having that confidence because of the way that we underwrite, I know this is going to be good for them. So as long as I'm getting to our goal to where we can actually start the investment and make the investment, as long as I'm confident we can get there, I want to max out everybody possible to get into the deal, because that's the whole point.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tim, we really appreciate you being here. You've been great.
Absolutely.
And not just because you said nice things about us. I mean, though that definitely helps. We really appreciate your time, and we really appreciate the time of everybody who listened to us, and we hope that you enjoyed what you heard. If you got any questions, comments, you can reach out to us through Substack, comments on this post, email, website. There's a chat bot there too. Literally everywhere you can look, there we are. So we appreciate you listening, and we hope you come back to listen to us again next week on another edition of the Get Invested podcast.
Thanks, guys.